If this looks kind of similar to last week's photo, that's probably because I shot this about a minute or two after last week's photo, and maybe I had that similar type of composition on my mind. And in some ways, shooting this type of photo almost seems like cheating. It's a single subject that contrasts with the foreground and background, shot with a really shallow depth of field, so it's isolated, and it's so easy to get this kind of picture. And I'm not trying to be conceited, but it really is easy. If you have a camera with a kit lens, zoom in your kit lens all the way so it's like 55 millimeters, set it on the ground, find an object, and open your aperture up as wide as it'll go, and you'll get a shot like this. Now, with a kit lens, zoomed in all the way to 55 millimeters, it won't be quite this level of foreground background blur, but you'll still get the same idea. If you've got a prime lens, especially a 50 or like a 35 or an 85, these shots are, you could take like 10 of them from wherever you're listening to this right now or watching this, if it's your office, if it's your house. These are super easy, but they're kind of cool. And just because they're easy doesn't mean they're not fun to take and interesting to look at. You also have to pay attention to lighting and where's the lighting coming from? What mood do you want to convey with the lighting? What about the foreground looks interesting? What aperture do you want to use to get it properly blurred out in the foreground and background? And if you scroll through Weekly 50 photos, you'll see a ton of shots just like this because they're just really cool to take, probably because they're so easy to take. I liked that this is a single feather against a contrasting brown background. And although maybe I've got a theme here because last week's was also just a brown foreground and background, but that's what happens out in nature in February when I shot this. I was wondering if it would be sharp enough though, and that's something that you hear online a lot. You'll hear people talking about lens sharpness and like, oh, well, this lens, if you shoot it wide open, it's not as sharp, or it's blurry in the corners, so you got to stop down and all that. This was shot with a 50 millimeter lens, like the 1.8 lens. It's like the most basic prime lens you can get. It's not a fancy lens, but look, it's perfectly sharp. I think this is even the f1.8 version, so this is wide open. I think I might have used the texture or sharpness slider in Lightroom a little bit, but I think if you're going to be pixel peeping that much, I'm not going to say don't do it because you do what works for you, but I've found that when I pay less attention to all the pixel peeping and all those little nitty-gritty details, like, oh, there's a slight bit of green and purple fringing and chromatic aberration. Forget it, man. Just take your photos and enjoy your photos, and don't worry about all the rest. And then if you find a style of photo you like to take, like this one, then just keep taking it. So I don't know what lesson I've learned through any of this other than that I like this type of photo, and I hope you like looking at it. And if you've never tried to take this type of photo, give it a shot. You can't really get it with your phone. You might be able to do it with portrait mode, but I don't know that portrait mode would recognize random objects like a feather. If you've got a DSLR, give it a try. And if you can get a longer focal length, like 50, 85, 100, even longer, that's fine. But it's kind of neat to take a single subject that contrasts with the foreground and background and make the viewer focus just on that one subject. It's not complicated, but it's fun and it works.